Hello, I am Ellie from Chronic Migraine Ellie, and I am really excited to be doing this Facebook Live with migraine support. So I'm just going to wait a little bit until we have a couple people watching, but basically all of my social media is down below. I do new posts every Friday, and I post about my life and living with chronic migraines. Hi! We have our first person watching, so we're just going to wait a little bit until a couple more people come on. But this is like really exciting for me because this is my first Facebook Live that I've ever done. So, hi Lisa, I'm really excited to be doing this as well. So I guess I will get started a little bit on my background and who I am and what I do. Can you guys hear me okay? Is it going, it's going okay? You guys can hear me pretty well? We'll see. Okay, if you guys can or if it goes in and out, just let me know, type in the comments or something. So I first started getting migraines when I was 15. So I'm 20 years old now, so it's been about 5 years. And I have chronic intractable migraines. And intractable means that it doesn't respond to, basically my migraines don't respond well to medications. So it has taken me a very, very long time and a lot of different drug trials to figure out what actually works for me, because I have more triggers than probably, there's just tons of triggers for me, and I'll get into that more. But basically what happened with me is, so when I was in my freshman year of high school, and that's when I had my first my first migraine episode, and it actually lasted 7 days. I actually have no recollection of it because I was in so much pain, so it was really, really crazy. And then after that, it just, every year around December through May, my migraines just got worse and worse, and it got to the point where I actually wasn't in school for about 2 to 3 months in my junior and senior years of high school, because I couldn't read, I couldn't write, and I couldn't focus for more than 5 minutes. I was spending almost all of my time sleeping, and when I wasn't doing that, I was in bed because I couldn't move. So it was a really crazy experience, and it was really hard growing up as basically my formative teenage years was basically defined by my migraines. So when I first started medication-wise, they just had me on Imitrex. So I was just like the pill, it worked, kind of, but we found out that I was getting rebound headaches, and I also had problems sleeping. So I was also prescribed Cambia, which it's this like potassium supplement type thing, but what that did is it basically just knocked me out for 12 hours, and I was not functional whatsoever. So obviously that didn't work. And then I was basically bounced around to a lot of different doctors, because one of the problems with pediatric neurology is that there's not that many pediatric neurologists, and not many of them are willing to see patients who have very complex cases. I'm sure that a lot of you guys know that, where you've had more people, you've had lots of doctors tell you that, they just basically tell you that they can't do anything for you, and they just throw drugs at you, and you're like, oh my god, like this is so much more difficult than that. Rhonda, I'm looking at your comment right now, and my question would be, what are you doing right now? What have you tried, and have you tried any holistic things? I'll get into this more, but I recently started doing biofeedback, which has actually been amazing, and it's actually allowed my pain levels to go down, and it's allowed me to really manage my pain and also my stress levels. So I'll get into that more later when I'm talking more about like the treatments that I do now. But basically what happened in the past like 4 years or so is I actually can't take triptans anymore. They don't touch my migraines, because I had something called central sensitization, which is basically when the migraine gets so bad that all of the nerves, basically like everything in your body is hypersensitive. I was so hypersensitive that I couldn't even, everything was too hot or too cold for me. It was really, really painful. And I also had allodynia, which is where, your hair hurts kind of, and it's a very painful thing. So the only thing that worked for me was dihydroergotamine. It's There's 3 different ways that you can use it. There's one, an IV, which is like when you go to a hospital or an outpatient clinic, like is what my doctor back home in Los Angeles did. There's also an intramuscular shot, which I also give myself when I still can. And then there's also a nasal spray. That is the only thing that works for me. I use that in addition to painkillers. Indomethacin is my go-to painkiller. But other than that, and the prophylactics that I'm on, those are the only drugs that I use, because nothing else has worked for me. So what I currently am on now, it's a little bit of an interesting story. I'm currently on nortriptyline, which is an antidepressant, but I'm actually not on it for clinical reasons. It's actually one of the side effects is actually that it can help with migraines, and it's really helped me. The other thing is it's actually an anti-Alzheimer's drug called Namenda. Andy Charles at UCLA did a study with about, I think it's like 200 people or 2,000. Don't quote me on that. But basically he did this great study where he looked at this anti-Alzheimer's drug and basically found that it helps migraine sufferers, it helps memory. It's with something called, with glutamate. And it's helped me a lot. It's actually been completely life-saving for me. My memory has completely improved so much, because if you look on my blog, I have a post about my experiences with memory loss, because my junior year of high school, my spring, I don't really remember a lot of it. I have about bits and pieces. So I'm on Namenda, and it's really great. And then the other thing is that I also get Botox. I've been doing Botox for, I think, almost 3 years now. Every 11 weeks. You're supposed to do it at 12 weeks, but we worked it out with my insurance because I was getting such bad withdrawal symptoms. And then the last thing that I'm on is I'm on progesterone birth control. I'm a very big advocate because I also have hormonal and non-hormonal migraines, but a year ago at 19, I actually got a blood clot because of the combination contraceptive pill that I was on. A little known fact is that if you have migraines with aura and you take a combination pill, you are actually more at risk for blood clots, which is a side effect of birth control. So that's something that I've talked a lot about. I have all of my posts on my blog that talk about my different experiences, which are so many that I could definitely spend way so much time on this, but I won't, because I want to start answering some of your questions. How do I function in a normal work day? So when I first was sick, it was very, very difficult for me to kind of function. There are days where I can't get out of bed. There are days where I can drag myself to class. I'm a college student, so there are days that I can drag myself to class, but I won't be able to take notes, or I won't be able to talk or be functional. And I've just kind of learned that you have to do what is right for you. And sometimes that means taking it easy, and sometimes, because my whole motto is you basically need to do what works for you. So if you're not feeling good, if you push yourself, you're definitely not going to feel good the next day. But if you take some time to rest, that'll help. It's obviously not going to make the pain go away, but you really need to listen to your body. That's the only thing that I can really say is just you have to listen to your body. You have to listen when you're too tired, when the pain is too much. You really just have to listen. Rhonda, so I see in the comments here that there's some conversation about Botox. So, Rhonda, it's actually really not that bad. It really isn't. It's basically about, it's like someone like pinching, just very, very lightly just pinching you with their nails. And honestly, half of the places didn't even hurt me. I haven't ever tried dry needling or cranial sacral therapy, Michelle, but I would definitely look into it, because I've actually never heard of it before. I know that you guys also wanted me to talk about my experiences with biofeedback. So when I moved to Connecticut for college, I started seeing a therapist who does neurofeedback. And I honestly can't tell you exactly what biofeedback does. All I know is that I have electrodes on my head, and I listen to music, I do my breathing, and somehow it is rewiring my brain, and it is helping so much. I honestly never know. I I never knew ever that biofeedback could actually help me so much. And I'm very lucky that my insurance actually does cover parts of it. So that is something definitely to ask your insurance, but it's definitely something to look into because it isn't a drug therapy. It's about rewiring your brain. And, you know, I wasn't a believer before. It's been life-changing for me, and my pain has really gone down. You know, obviously it hasn't gone away. None of these therapies, none of the drugs that I'm on will ever make my migraines go away because there's no cure, but it definitely helps. So, yeah. I guess the other thing that I can talk about is also my triggers. So, I have a lot of triggers. It has been a really crazy experience figuring out all of my triggers. I have the usual flashing lights, flashing lights, bright lights, loud sounds, vibrations, pressure changes, you know, basically going outside. And then I also I also have environmental triggers. We found this out really crazy. I'm actually extremely allergic to tree pollen. So I actually went through immunotherapy about a year and a half ago, because, it actually completely helped because my migraines, so I'm from Los Angeles originally, and my migraines were the worst between December and May, and that's actually tree season in Los Angeles. So, crazy thing, which almost no doctor believed until we went to our allergist and was like, could this be a thing? And she was like, well, we can do the testing and we'll see. And it turned out that was a thing. But, you know, never be afraid to ask your doctor questions. I think that's one of the things that I've talked with a lot of migraine sufferers, and, you know, I'm part of a lot of support groups, and that's one of the things that I really speak out about, is that you should never feel like you can't talk to your doctor about something. You should never feel like a question is too stupid, that a question is not worthy, that, you know, you are at your doctor to seek help. And, you know, while unfortunately not all doctors are going to be helpful, you know, the only way that you're going to be able to, you know, maybe find something that works for you is if you ask questions, and if you talk to people, and if you talk about what's worked for you. That's what I've done a lot with my blog, and that's actually why I started my blog, was because, you know, I've gone through millions of drug trials. I could list it off for all of you guys, but I've basically done almost everything. You know, the beta blockers, the Topamax, you know, you name it, I've been on it. And it's really rough because going on and off of meds is really, really scary. And I'm the type of person where I get those like really pesky side effects. So, you know, with like beta blockers, I got bronchial spasms. It was one of like the most terrifying experiences of my life, you know? But, you know, it's very hard when doctors don't understand that we aren't doing everything that we can. And so going back to quickly about triggers is, also I have a lot of food triggers. I found out that actually I am gluten intolerant. I cannot metabolize gluten, and actually it'll give me migraines. I also can't have any soy or tyramine. So that's anything that's in like aged or fermented things. We actually found that out because I made a smoked Gouda grilled cheese about 3 years ago and immediately had a migraine. I will know if I have a food trigger accidentally within 5 minutes because I will get a migraine. So food triggers are really important. You know, if you haven't done an elimination diet, you should definitely try and do it. It definitely helps me to figure out what my triggers were, and it's helped me be healthier because I feel better. Guy, I'm looking at your comment. So I actually used to be an athlete. I used to play soccer and volleyball, and I actually used to play violin, so I used to be a very active person. One of the problems that I've had is I had a lot of chronic fatigue, especially when I was really, really sick. Exercising, even just walking briskly, would make me feel like I was going to pass out. And unfortunately, it hasn't gotten that much better. It really hasn't gotten that much better. I was actually at an event for my sorority yesterday, and after running for about 10 minutes, I felt like I was going to pass out, so I had to sit down. And it may be, you know, I know exercise works for some people, which is wonderful. I miss running. I really wish I could go running. It would be absolutely wonderful. But, you know, if it works for you, keep doing it. You know, if it doesn't, you know, there's other ways to stay active, to stay fit. I've done yoga. I have some like ab exercises and stretches. And, you know, basically do what works for you. If something feels good for you, do that. Keep doing it. So, Lisa, how do people treat me when I can't do things because of a migraine? It's a little crazy. I've had a lot of different experiences with people. Well, first of all, a migraine is not a headache. It's actually it's a neurological disease. So whenever someone says to you, oh, it's just a headache, say, actually, it's not. And if they ever have problems with that, point them to me. I will tell them that they are completely wrong and that it's actually not. And actually, it's a very, very painful experience. It's actually a full body experience. And no one, you know, if anyone is ever trying to talk down to you because you have migraines, because you're not feeling well, sometimes it's worth it just to not engage. Or it's maybe send them, you know, some educational materials, because honestly, part of the reason why people don't understand is because they don't have the correct information. So I've, you know, once I actually started speaking out about my own experiences, whether it was my friends or my professors, you know, people change. Their opinions of migraine change. Once they know that someone that they're close to goes through this and you explain, this is what I go through, this is my pain, it helps them see things in a new light. So I'm a big advocate of educating people, and it's not easy. It's really not easy. When I was in high school, I had to fight for almost all of my accommodations. I had multiple teachers, not saying I had some wonderful ones who were just the best ever, but I had a couple people who, I had one tell me that I wasn't going to graduate high school. I had another one tell me that I couldn't postpone a test because I wasn't able to read or focus at the time, because other students also had obligations. You know, it's just, a lot of people will say a lot of really horrible things to you. Even at my health center in college, every single time I have to go in there, at least one of the nurses looks at me and goes, well, isn't it just because of stress? It's like, you know, I wish it were that easy. You know, I actually have a whole article on my blog, and actually on the Mighty as well, was something that I call illness-splaining, where people think that they know more about my illness than I do. And so, you know, you have people telling you that, you know, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? But it's not in like, oh, like, I'm actually like genuinely interested. It's, you should be doing this. And it's just, honestly, okay, sorry, I need to like take a breather for a second. Basically, you know, people are going to say really horrible things to you, but you just need to know that you are not alone, that people do understand, and there are a lot of people who also have migraines and who also are going through the same experiences, and it's up to us to make sure that our voices are heard loud and clear, so that we can actually change how people look at migraines. So, wait, sorry, let me just go through the comments for a second. Sheila, okay, so I was talking about this before. So actually, DHE is the only thing that works for me. When I was at the Cedars Pain Center for when I was in Los Angeles for about 4 years, and so I was an outpatient for basically all of it. And every time that I had a really horrible migraine, they would do DHE IV therapy. It's been a lifesaver for me, honestly. I can't take triptans. And so DHE, if you haven't tried it yet and you're eligible, you know, like there's like you don't have any other like comorbid disorders that could possibly react with it, I definitely think that people should talk to your doctors about it, because for me it has been a complete game changer, and it's actually allowed me to well, I'm in college now, I'm a sophomore, and we weren't sure that I was actually going to go to college. I'm not exactly sure about the CT scan that shows cysts, but I also know that sinus migraines are very, very common. So, if anyone else knows that, talk to Sheila. Sarah, yeah, so I actually never really thought of myself as having a disability until I came to college. It just wasn't the way that I looked at myself. It wasn't the way that maybe it was a coping mechanism, but I just didn't think I had a disability. And it wasn't until I got to college that I had to file for my accommodations, and it was filed under disability. But then I realized that I was kind of playing into the stigma of what a disability is. And so, it's something that's very stigmatized, but really it's okay. And it is a disability, Migraines are extremely debilitating. They're extremely debilitating. It is really, really hard to live. Your whole life changes. It's really hard to work. It's really hard, to do anything really. So, if you do need to file for disability, I know people who have. I'm a part of a couple support groups that have had people who file. I personally haven't had to yet. I'm still dependent on my parents right now because I'm in college. But there's information out there. There are definitely other people who can help you through the process if you were thinking about doing that. And Rhonda, sometimes pain happens in the morning. I've woken up in the middle of the night with a migraine and it sucks. It just, pain always, it will always come at any time. It has, it has no calendar. It doesn't really care what we have to do in our lives. It just is kind of there. So is there a common way to avoid a migraine? So actually, I wanted to talk about this. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to migraines. There's not. There's a lot of people who believe that there is, but there's not. We only have a handful of ways to deal with them. And, I've always said that, I've had a couple friends who have gotten a migraine here or there, and they've been trying to deal with it. And so one of the things I say is, have a little bit of caffeine, take a non-steroidal, like take some Advil or, but there really is no one way to treat migraines. Some person is going to have, triptan is going to work for them. For some people, maybe an opioid is going to work for them. Maybe, for me, DHE is going to work. It really is about finding the treatment plan that works for you, but that also means that you have to actually be aware of what your options are, which I think is one of the biggest problems with the migraine community, and especially with doctors, is that so many of us, we have no idea what's happening. We're in pain, we're just trying to get through it, and it's so important that, when you go into your doctor's office, half the time they're so quick that you're like, it's like a flash, it's done, you're over, you're out. So if you go in with a list and you're like, so I know someone who did this, or this drug worked for this person, or maybe we should look into doing this. If you do that, that could, I think that's personally the best way to approach treating migraines, is looking at the options that are out there and then dealing with them, trying things. That's honestly the only way that it's going to work. I know that's a little, maybe not the answer that people want to hear, but unfortunately that's what it is. So Sheila, so at my worst, I was having seven migraines a week, so at least one every day. Now I only have to take DHE about 2 times a week, maybe 3. Sometimes I can get away with not taking it. If I use other things, if I use non-steroidals or Reglan, and caffeine sometimes, I only drink caffeine for, basically just to help with the migraines. But it's a better drug for me because this is going into your question, Erica. But rebound headaches with triptans were a big thing for me. Which is part of the reason why I can't take them anymore, because they just stopped working. So one of the things with rebounds is, make sure that you have a calendar or a tracker and you know what you're taking. If you know that if you take this specific medication and it, and the next day you get a rebound, and next week you have another migraine, you take the same medication and you have a rebound the next day, maybe, track it. Tracking is the best way to figure out your migraine triggers, and also how to make sure that like you can figure out what's causing your rebounds. Half the time it really is from your medications. That's what it was for me. Non-steroidals can also cause rebound headaches as well. So that's just something to watch out for. But definitely tracking. I use I think it's Migraine Buddy. So yeah. Sylvia. Yeah. I am very lucky to have a really wonderful support system. It was a really tough time for my family. It was a really, really difficult time, and my parents would basically have to drop what they were doing and get me to Cedars, and it was really scary. And at one point they were talking about flying me to other headache clinics across the country. Luckily we didn't have to get to that, but it was a real thing. And I've only passed out once because of the pain. It was absolutely terrifying. I was in class and no one noticed around me, and I was totally freaked out about it. So props to you. You're such a strong person. Okay. So Sandra, so I have been having Botox for about 3 years. It works for some people, it doesn't work for others. It's something that you basically have to try. You won't know if it's going to work or not until you try it. And when that happens, you also have to try it more than once. So a lot of people try it once and they're like, well, this isn't doing anything. You need to have at least, I think it's like 2 or 3 administrations before you really know. But it's been really helpful for me. It's also cut down on my back and neck pain as well. So yeah, I mean, it's worth having the conversation to do it. So there's a lot of questions about DHE. So DHE is dihydroergotamine, which is so basically it's a very old migraine drug. I'm like blanking on like all of the information on it right now, but it's actually becoming more well known. So Sheila, so with the inpatient, so I've actually had inpatient. Wait, no, just kidding. I almost did inpatient. But there's 3 different ways that DHE can work. One is IV, so that's out of hospital or at an outpatient center. The second way is IM injections, so intramuscular injections. So basically, when it got to a point where I was too sick to basically leave my house to get to the hospital, my mom would give me injections, and I now that I'm in college, I give myself the injections. But obviously sometimes when I have migraines, I can't do it because I can't focus enough. But, and then basically my first line of defense is the nasal spray. So it's 4 milligrams. It's two sprays in each nostril and over a span of 15 minutes. And it's been amazing. It's, the inpatient is hard. The drug hurts. It made me so nauseous. And so you have if you are doing inpatient, ask for Zofran or another anti-nausea. There was this one time that they give me 8 milligrams when I get it IV. They tried to give me 4 milligrams once, and I ended up throwing up in the bathroom, which was not fun. And then they ended up giving me more Zofran because I was like green. So just make sure that you have an anti-nausea med that you can take as well. But don't be scared of doing inpatient. It's really effective, really helpful, and DHE has really worked for me. So the next question is about my period. So I have both hormonal and non-hormonal migraines. So the first medication that I was ever on prophylactically was birth control. And so what we ended up doing was we would actually schedule my periods out. So I would have about 1 a year and we would plan it over my breaks. So that way then I would be able to basically, collapse because I would have really, really bad menstrual migraines. After my blood clot, we had to switch off of that medication. And then I was on the progesterone pill. And I actually was off of birth control for about 3 weeks because we had to make sure that the blood thinner was working, that it was helping with the clot. And that was really difficult because that was the first time in about 2.5 years that I hadn't had any hormonal therapy, and my migraines got really bad. And then I went onto the progesterone pill, which helped, except for the fact that I was also on a blood thinner and I had my period for 28 days. So I also had more problems with that. But now the pill that I'm on Micronor. It's also called norethindrone, is like the generic name. Basically, I get my period every 3 months, and it is so much less. I actually barely get menstrual migraines anymore because of that. So it's been really helpful for me. But, I was blessed with both menstrual and non-menstrual migraines, so it's a little difficult. But basically, once we got that under control, once we got the menstrual migraine part of it under control with hormonal therapy, it was a lot better. I'm trying to see if I have missed anyone else's questions, or if you guys have any other questions for me. I guess the other thing that I wanted to talk about was my advocacy work. So, as you guys can see below, if you look down, my blog and all of my social media is there. If you guys want to follow me, I also just recently, about a month ago, I took part in something called Headache on the Hill, which is the Alliance for Headache Disorders advocacy event. And basically what we do is, not only do we raise awareness for migraines, but we also, we basically work with congressmen and representatives in the U.S. Congress, and we basically we have specific asks. And so this was my first year doing it, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I have never been in a room with so many people who understand, who understand what I've been going through. And so this year we actually our ask was, it was really fun. It was such a crazy day, but it was really fun because our ask was about it was about changing the language of this one act, the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, to increase NIH funding for chronic pain to make opioids obsolete. So basically, part of the reason why we're doing that is because, as you guys know, there's barely any migraine meds out there. There's barely any pain medication that actually works so much. So basically, we're working to make sure that the NIH will have the money to do research, so that way then we can actually have better pain therapies. Because, while opioids work for some people, and if they work for you, amazing. But at least for me, oh God, it was not a good experience for me. It took the pain away, but I got rebounds, and I had side effects, and it just wasn't good. But that's part of the problem, is that we don't have enough pain options out there. We have a couple things that we have to take for pain. So this is why we need to do more research and also just raise awareness. And so, I started my blog because I felt very alone. I'm 20. This started when I was 15. And, growing up as a teenager, it was really difficult because I was one of the only kids who really couldn't do anything. I used to be a super active person, and I used to play violin and soccer and volleyball, and I couldn't anymore. I could barely leave the house, and I really didn't know anyone else who was like me. And I really thought that I was alone. I felt very alone. And it wasn't until I started looking on support groups, basically on Facebook, that I realized that I really wasn't alone. And that's part of the reason why I started my blog, is because I was like, well, I have all these experiences. Why not talk about it, I've always wanted to be in politics. I've always wanted to affect change. And the only way that we're actually going to make a difference in how people view migraines and other invisible illnesses is by talking about it. We need to break the stigma, and, it's not something that should be stigmatized. We shouldn't feel shameful for, dealing with something that we have no control of. So that's kind of just my own personal reasons for, doing this and also doing my blog. And it just it warms my heart. everything that you guys have been commenting and just everything, and it's been really amazing. So I just got a couple more questions. Roberta, so no, actually, I did not get migraines before I started my period. So I got my period when I was 12 for the first time, and I didn't have my first migraine until I was 15. So yeah, they still have no idea what is causing my migraines. I have had, oh God, I have so many different blood panels, tests. They thought I had lupus at one point. They thought I had, I think it was non-connective tissue disease at one point. Basically, I've been tested for everything. I don't really have a hereditary background in my family. Only a couple people in my family have had migraines, maybe like a couple times in their lives, but never anything like me. Which is, it's interesting because a lot of people have, a family history of migraines. It is really difficult not knowing why this is happening to me and that I have no control over it. It is really difficult, and I talk a lot about that on my blog. Yeah, it's, the worst thing for me is when people are kind of weird and stupid about it, and they're like, aren't you just stressed? Isn't stress just the cause of it? And I'm just always a big proponent of being like, actually, if it was just stress, wow, my life would be so much easier. So, but yeah, so, are there any other questions that you guys have, about treatment options or, just advocacy or how you can get involved? So, great question, Lisa. I've actually had a whole, had kind of like a whole experience in the past 6 months. So I'm actually pursuing a career in public health and public policy. I'm gonna see how my college years go, basically. I'm about halfway through, but I might be pursuing MD, PhD, so we'll see if I might become a doctor. I don't know. But I'm also very interested in politics and the policy aspect, because there's a lot of inequality that goes on in our healthcare system. And I've talked a lot about this on my blog, especially with my blood clot, because I was refused treatment, and I got very, very lucky because it didn't turn into a pulmonary embolism, but I was refused treatment twice. I had to threaten to go to another hospital before they even did a diagnostic scan. And I've had multiple experiences like that, and with migraines as well, where, I've had to go to the ER because the pain is just so bad, and they would refuse to give me anything because they thought I was drug seeking, or they just didn't know how to handle it. And so my goal in the next 5 to 10 years, it's a big goal, but I want to change the way that our healthcare system views chronic and invisible illness and chronic pain. Because, yeah, exactly, like what you just said, so many people just think that you can just pop a pill and you're done, and, you're fine. But that's not what happens. It really isn't what happens. So, it's, my career, I want to be able to help people, because there are so many migraineurs out there, all over the world. And many of us are actually undiagnosed, which is a crazy thing because, everyone knows a migraine is so completely different than a headache. But there's not enough education out there, and, not enough people know what to look for in the symptoms. So, yeah, it's been an interesting ride for me in the past couple months, because I've been thinking a lot about, what are the best ways to help people? One of the things that I'm very, very aware of is insurance companies. I have spent more hours on the phone with my insurance company arguing with them. Probably more time. I don't even want to put a number to it, but it should be easier. It should not be this difficult to get care, and also it should not be this difficult to get the medications and the treatment options that you need. So, in the next hopefully in the next couple years, I'm going to be, well, I'm only 20 right now, so I still have a long way to go, but it's still really great for me to be doing this now and to be talking about this now. But also with Headache on the Hill, I met so many amazing people who are also talking out about this as well. So, it was, yeah. I'm reading your comment, Evelinda. Yeah, fluorescent lights are the worst. I'm in my dorm room right now. It's a mess, so I'm not going to show you guys everything, but I actually don't use the lights in my room. I actually got different lights that I can actually tolerate. For example, you can see my string lights up there. But, you know, I guess the main thing is figure out your triggers and take care of yourself. And really listen to your body. I know I said this before, but I'm going to repeat it again. One of the best things that I ever learned, and it was by trial and error, is that if you can't do something, don't push it. Because I made myself worse. I made myself a lot worse, actually, when I couldn't read and write and when I was in high school. And so I would convince myself that I was okay and that I could keep working and actually make my migraine worse. And it would prolong the pain, it would prolong the migraine because I didn't give myself the time to rest. And that's something I learned the hard way, where you need to give yourself the time to rest. You need to give yourself the time and the space, and it's really important to do that. And unfortunately, the society that we live in today is a very fast-paced, you have to do this, you have to do it. You don't. You need to take care of yourself. So, yeah. I guess if there's any other questions, I think those ones will be like the last couple ones that I'm going to take. But thank you guys all so much for tuning in. This has been so much fun for me to talk about. Again, my social media is down below, so I post every Friday. I didn't post this past Friday because I was doing this, but I post every Friday. And I have other updates on my Instagram as well. It's probably like one of my most active social media. But it's been amazing to hear from all of you guys today. And if you guys have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I love talking to people about what their options, what they go through and what their options are. I'm always here to lend an ear if anyone wants. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much. This has been so enjoyable. Okay, bye.